Hi and welcome to another episode, and what we've got is Retro Fighters brawler64 wireless gamepad for the N64, also known as the Nintendo 64, this wonderful beastie. Now, you're probably going, you've covered this before, what you're doing? Well, that was the unboxing stroke. I've just taken it out of the box. How does it feel to my fingers right there and then? Well, this is the bit of where I've actually played around with it for a bit. Now, sadly, this does not work with this memory pack, this memory pack, this memory pack, or even this memory pack. So I contacted Retro Fighters and they said, okay, you've got third-party memory packs. I'm sort of summarising the conversation that I had with them, it's not quote for quote. Can you please try and do a reset? Now to do the reset, while the dongle's plugged in, you hold down A, B and start for 3 seconds, wait for the flashing lights and then try again. So I did that, didn't work, didn't do anything. So with a bit of conversation, they said, can you try getting your hands on the stock one? Which I sort of put it to them more than they put it to me. So I found out that they're called controller packs without the C, because that's how Nintendo decided to spell pack for some stupid reason. Anyway, the NUS 004, which I did because obviously third-party things can be annoying and stuff. They did say they had one of them or something like one of them, but to be sure, let's go stock. So fair enough. I bought one off of eBay. It came relatively quickly even. Tried it, plugged it in, still didn't work. So they went, aha, maybe there is a fault in the dongle. We'll send you out another one. I was like, oh, okay then. So they sent out another one, and I was expecting pretty much just a new dongle. But what they actually did was sent me the whole kit and caboodle again. So I've actually got 2 gamepads to playing around with, the other one's off screen at the moment. So that leaves me with this. There may well be a dry solder or something like that in here. So at some point I will open this up and see if I can fix it. Because dry solder points can be annoying. I understand enough from soldering from what I do, and I don't do an awful lot of soldering, that sometimes your solder works and then a week later it doesn't. And it turns out it's because it's a dry solder point. It's one of those weird things of like, it's enough just for a few goes of electricity going through it, and then for whatever reason in the realms of physics it stops working. So I don't get confused, this is the new one. I'm going to put my memory pack back in again, and this works. That's all good. So the memory works. So let's move on to the gamepad itself of actually being used. Now, as I say, the gamepad, the dongle worked, but for whatever reason, no matter what game I was playing, and at first I was trying to play around with Puzzle Bobble. The reason why I try to play around with Puzzle Bobble is because it likes to know that there's a memory pack when it loads up. It'll give you a load of green writing otherwise, or if there's a problem with it, it'll complain and say they need to fix it. So I've sort of used that as a test the game. The thing is though, for the left and the right, for the arrow and Puzzle Bobble, because obviously you've got to match up the balls and everything, you've got your little shooty thing to get going, it was always pushing it to the right. And so I did the down, A, B and start all at the same time, press down, so a bit like this, and with the dongle in, and that actually fixed the problem, and I've not had a problem since. And I've charged it up, ran out of power, started up again, everything like that, and it works fine. So if you're having some kind of drift problem when you first get yours, I recommend, again, press down, A, B and start all at the same time for about 3 seconds, flashy lights will happen, and then you have to press start again to actually make it resync, and when it does that, it works. Or at least it did for me. Now, actually moving on to the use of the gamepad. Straight away, it's light, and it's light because you're so used to, or I'm so used to, using gamepads now that have 2 motors in them. You know, that gives a bit of weight, and that's the only reason why it's light. The you know, the design of it is that it could do with a little bit more weight in it, because we are so used to it. If we were so used to just basically empty gamepads like this, or empty-ish, you know what I mean, it wouldn't notice. But because we're so used to a weighted one, so what I might do at a later date is open it up and actually stick a couple of chunks of metal in on both sides, just to give it a bit of heft, you know, give it a bit of weight. I do wish that Retro Fighters had actually made it so that there was a little switch on here, a bit like the one that's actually in this Rumble pack and memory pack. If they had done that, you know, on the underside or something, or across the top, maybe even a button, some clever button that sent a signal to the dongle while it was turned on. Don't bother with the memory pack, I want to do some rumbling now. And maybe even just a button would be enough, just a switch. You could even have a third one in the middle there, or, you know, up the top as if it was a sync button or something, like with modern gamepads. Stop messing around with the memory. I want to play around with being rumble now, and actually had some motors in here, so it did some rumbling. That would have been really nice. Sure, it would have added extra cost, but it wouldn't have been that much, I don't think. And besides, I think customers would have bought it anyway, even if it was in there. So maybe they'll do a version 2 with that idea. I don't know how to program that up. I don't know the logistics behind it. I just think it's a nice idea. On to the actual using of the fire buttons, all of them. In some games there's a little bit of a delay, but it's so small it's not really worth talking about. Most of the games you don't even notice that there's a bit of a lag. The lag that is there in some games, and I've forgotten the names of which ones it is, because I have tested a fair few, and I was silly enough not to actually put some notes down. But the point is that the little bit of lag that is there, it's so small, it's really not worth talking about, in the realms of within a few minutes you get used to this is the time that you got to press the button. It's fractional. It really is so fractional, to the point that it might even be just in my head versus it's actually there. It might just be a matter of opinion versus stuff. The distance of pressing the fire button seemed just the same as what it is for the wide version of this gamepad. So yeah, take that as you will. The D-pad is a nice D-pad. It works just as well as the wide version. The stick, as I said, it did have a bit of drift when I first turned it on. As I said, pressing down A, B and start fixed that. I don't know if the drift is the real term for it, because it was just off. It wasn't as if it was slowly drifting across and getting worse and worse and worse. It was just, it wasn't, when the stick was central like that, it was still pressing right, just ever so slightly, but it was there enough. And a quick reset fixed that. So maybe there's some kind of clever computering in centralizing the joystick of the sensors that it feels. So, but the stick itself, again, feels fine. You know, you played around with Mario 64, running around and doing all the fun stuff you can do in that. Plays well enough, for me at least. And then, what else can I talk about with this? The triggers and the shoulder buttons. The shoulder buttons, to me, feel like they could have done with a little bit more stiffness. Not a lot, just a little bit. It does feel a little bit cheap, I have to say. I mean, you can even hear. I think when you pull the fire button, the smacking of plastic in this modern age, it's not something you really want to hear. You want to feel that you've pressed the button, but you don't want the smacking of plastic. So if they felt a bit more like the triggers do, where you can tell that you've pressed the fire button, but there's no smacking of plastic. But again, that's just my own silly opinion. I do think it needs a little bit more weight. It could do with the rumble. I don't know how easy that would be for them to do, but that's a version 2, not this one. But as a whole, the colouring, the plastic's nice. I mean, it matches up quite nicely with my EverDrive, which of course is based on this sort of transparent red of the N64 you can buy, or could buy rather. I mean, they're out there second hand. Yeah, I would actually say go for it. If for a reason that you think that you're going to be not sat near your N64 close enough to have a wire version, you know, a wire's annoying to you, get yourself one. Get yourself a wireless gamepad for the N64 from Retro Fighters. If you're not so fussed, you're not so bothered, you're happy enough with having a controller that's wired, by all means buy the brawler64 wired version and use an extension cable. But at the same time, you know, we've all got, you know, different reasons on why we want wireless. You know, other halves, children, pets, all the above, friends who've had a few too many whiskies, you know, those sort of things. You know, these are the sort of things that you might want a wireless version, and this is good enough. By all means, it's good enough. It's not perfect, but let's be honest, what in life is? So get yourself one. As always, happy gaming.